this is kind of a catch-all conversation. We wound up by looking at from within what would really motivate a change in habit around eating.
And one of the last things you said was that to you, it turns into a spiritual conversation. That I resisted and pushed back against was reaching beyond who I know myself to be and asking for support and help. So fear and shame as motivations, I want nothing more to do with that. I don't want those to motivate any change that I make in my life. Welcome to another True You podcast. This is my co-host, Dr. Marty, and I'm Bill Tierney. We're both coaches. We coach in different ways, different approaches to supporting our clients. We probably coach, I don't know, maybe the same kinds of clients, maybe not. But because of how we focus and what we try to help our clients to accomplish, and that kind of determines a little bit about how we go about supporting. Why don't we spend a little bit of time talking about that? Even though I've got an idea of where to go today with our topic, how about we spend a little time? Let's get your voice in the room here and talk a little bit about who we coach and how we coach them.
Yeah, I was just going to say, my clientele, the demographics of my clientele has changed several times in major ways. In the course of a career, it used to be only financial advisors, and they were all doing business development work with me, right? And then it spread out into other entrepreneurial, like startups and people who run like even dentists. I coached like 3 or 4 dentists on the business, obviously not on dentistry. And then I wrote the leadership book, and now there's this emphasis on people who are in leadership positions, managers or CEOs or parents, right? That's also a leadership position. So, the people that I'm coaching is also different from the people who read my newsletter. So there, I wasn't exactly sure what you meant when you said that, honestly. We might be coaching the same people, or they might be very different.
I would imagine that if my clients went to you, they would have a different experience than what they have with me, just because of our approach is different.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe also that if my clients went to you, they'd have a positive experience with you. They'd get a lot of value from doing that.
Yeah. My clients would go to you and they would say, "Oh, this is where you learned that inner family stuff."
That's right. Internal family.
It is unavoidable, like in the sense that I've learned so much from you that it just naturally comes out with me, even though I'm not really trained in it. It sneaks into my coaching now. I can't help it.
Yeah, it once I began to see through the lens of the internal family systems model, it's hard to not see through that lens anymore because it just seems to make so much sense.
Yeah,
it seems to explain so much.
Yeah, it does.
I was talking with someone that's just recently signed up for the Elevate coach training program that I'm doing with my new partner, Rachel Parks. And the three of us, Rachel, me, and the person that just signed up, I won't mention her. I'm sure that Rachel will not mind me mentioning her name, but I don't want to mention the name of the person that signed up for our cohort because I don't have her permission. But one of the things that we all have in common is that we graduated from accomplishment coaching. Mm-hmm. Different parts of the country where we took our trainings, different trainers. Mm-hmm. And in fact, Rachel was a trainer for accomplishment coaching for about 6 years. And the conversation was about ontological coaching, which is a more traditional coaching approach than coaching with IFS. The question was, how does ontological and IFS coaching compare? And how do you integrate IFS into coaching? Because IFS is a therapy model. Mm-hmm. And so I did one of my favorite things to do, which is indulged in my storytelling and attempted to keep it brief, which I fail at miserably. It's so difficult to tell a full story briefly. But what I shared with this person was that what sold me on IFS as a coaching modality was the experience that I had in therapy and how it changed me from doubting myself and feeling like a fraud after 6 years of coaching successfully, shifting from that state to a state of innate confidence that was not performance based.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened in 2016. And I began my training in 2019 as an IFS practitioner. And because I was being trained by therapists with therapists in the room, and there was 36 of us, I think there were 36 students over the course of an entire year, I got inundated into IFS therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I had my own therapist. I was practicing with other therapists and practitioners to do the model. And then I was applying it to my coaching clients. But because the pendulum had swung so far away from looking at cause and effect, trying to solve problems for people, looking at things purely from the perspective of who would you have to be in order to get the result that you need to be, and then choosing into that. In other words, that's kind of the way I see ontological coaching. And shifting away from that into, let's get curious about what happens inside, that you find whatever actions that would be needed to be successful in your objective so difficult to do. That for the first couple of years after I began training, I simply helped clients explore their inner worlds without anchors of where do you want to go and have we arrived there, which are so fundamental to coaching. And when I recognized 2 years later that was the case, that I was ungrounded in my coaching, that I wasn't anchoring the coaching relationship in an objective and progress measuring, tracking results, that I was feeling lost. And that's because I was getting better and better at using the IFS model, but I hadn't been practicing applying the basic principles of coaching, which is I'm a coach, you're a client, you want a result, I'm here to help you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when, and I was explaining to this person that just signed up for Elevate, that's when I began writing, putting some structure and describing. That's when I realized I just needed to formalize some structure so that the IFS therapy model became an IFS coaching model.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's when I created ultimately it ended up being Compassionate Results guidebook that I wrote so that people would have a guide for how to use IFS in coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything began to just really click because clients were coming in and getting the experience that they would expect and hope to get with any coach, which is clarification about what they wanted to achieve. And then a process using a tool or whatever tools were at the coach's disposal. And in my case, it was all the tools that I'd learned before I learned IFS plus IFS. So it turned into, instead of me being an IFS coach, in other words, someone that just used IFS to help people in whatever, to heal their past, taught people how to use IFS. Instead of just being an IFS coach, now I became a coach that uses IFS as one of the tools.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Found it far more efficient and effective and anchored and grounded than it ever has been.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Question: would it be accurate or fair to say that you could, like, if you and I were watching somebody else doing a coaching session with a client, that I could say, oh, you see why that worked? Because the ontology. You see, that's ontology at work. This is all ontology. And you could be watching the same conversation and say, you see, that's parts work. That's the reason why this is effective is the parts work. See how that part work? Like, would you agree that you could look at the same conversation from either point of view and why the coaching itself is effective?
Yeah, definitely. You can see any situation, any conversation from either lens, but depending on the lens that you're looking through, that's going to impact where the conversation goes.
Oh, say more.
So earlier I defined ontology as I used it I don't consider myself to be an ontological coach anymore, just because I'm using IFS as the primary tool.
Uh-huh.
But that doesn't diminish the fact that who someone is being in their lives is what determines how they view what goes on in their lives, and therefore what they get out of their lives, what ends up happening as they put efforts in.
Whatever part is being given voice is also determining a certain way of being.
Definitely. Absolutely. However, before I learned about IFS, once it was established, this is who you're being, that you're getting the result that you're getting, or this is who you're being, that you're struggling to get that result. Where we go from there is different. What I used to do as an ontological coach is, once it was established and the client really got, oh yeah, this is who I'm being, and then we'd shift to who would you need to be in order to get that result, or to be able to move through this resistance or trouble or whatever's happening that's getting in the way. Then we would talk about, well, what would that look like if that's who you were being? Then what actions would you be taking? And
it's interesting. If you don't mind my just slowing this down a little bit, I'm finding this I'm like sorting something out for myself here.
Oh, okay.
And if it's off topic, we can do it another time. But it seems to me there are a number of places where you could go once you recognize who you're being and how that's playing a role in the results you're getting. You could say, well, who do I need to be in order to get those results? But you still might get 3 or 4 different answers to that question.
Mm-hmm.
You could also ask a whole different question, say, well, who do you want to be? Maybe that result isn't, forget the result. Who do you want to be? Like it seems like there could be different plays that plays is a good word. Even inside of ontological coaching, you wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, now we got to figure out the way to be that's going to produce that result. It's not always.
Oh yeah, no, I didn't mean to represent anybody that's an ontological coach. I'm just telling you how I did it. That what was common for me. And what you just now pointed to is that the idea, the possibility that if we were just only to look at who would you need to be to get that result, we might miss that result was only produced, that desire for that result was only produced because you're being who you're being.
Because
you're being who you are being.
Right.
It is the being that I am that chooses this as an objective for coaching. Mm-hmm. What if that being shifted? What if I shifted from who I feel like I have to be, and we could establish that in a conversation? I am being who I think I need to be. I am being who I think people expect me to be. Or I am being who I really am. I am being who I want to be.
Yeah.
All of that shifts what objective a client might come to the coaching to try to achieve. Or they may opt out of coaching altogether if they were just if they're able just to shift into being who they really are. Mm-hmm. Or there's so many different options there. Absolutely.
Got it.
Yeah. So anything more you want to say about this? I mean, we could make this the entire podcast if you'd like to. Maybe the difference between different approaches of coaching and how.
Well, there was something else though that I'm curious what else that you had in mind.
Well, the other thing was that I just had an IFS session this morning with an IFS practitioner who approaches coaching through the lens of IFS 100% of the time. While I believe this practitioner would agree that it's helpful to have a coaching objective, it's certainly not necessary in order to have a powerful and effective session. Because I'm a coach and because I think in that way, I brought an objective to the coaching session. This was the second coaching session that we had in support of this particular objective. Uh-huh. And that was that I wanted to change my relationship to my body. I want to change my relationship to food. I want to change my relationship to exercise and activity, which boils down to I want to change my relationship to my body.
Okay.
And in our previous session, we explored a group of parts of me that love to snack and say, who cares about the physical impact of just eating whatever I want whenever I want to? Mm-hmm. And then there's another group of parts that are organized around the principle and concept of wanting to live longer and to live healthy and to look as good as I can and feel as good as I can. Those two groups of parts have an inner conflict going on. They clash on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And my experience has been that over the past 20 years, off and on, I have dieted. I have given up on, for example, I'll give up on sugar, bread, pasta, and just exclude those from my diet whatsoever, to great effect. I'll lose weight. I'll lose my belly. My face will thin out. My appearance changes. I feel healthier. I feel better. My body likes it better when I don't put sugar and bread and pasta in it. But my taste buds, the parts of me that use my taste buds for pleasure, instead of to discern whether it's poison or nutritious, those parts really love sugar and bread and pasta and mass quantities of food and pleasure eating. And and those parts are very influential as well, especially this time of the year around Christmas, the holidays, when there's so many goodies everywhere. We're recording this on the 30th of December, Christmas being 5 days ago. This will be out to be listened to in the first couple of weeks of January, probably. But then, of course, anybody might be listening to this anytime after that. But if someone's listening right about now, right about this time of the year, within the next 2 or 3 weeks, and like me are experiencing, oh man, I've got this bloatedness, I've got this heaviness, I'm not happy with my body looks like. The parts of me that want to be healthier, that want to look better, that want to feel better, those parts are going to probably have a hand up here. They're gonna probably have an advantage. The other parts have had their way. It's almost like I'm hungover now. And a hangover, that's when you decide you're going to quit drinking. When the price of cigarettes goes up another $2 a pack, that's when you want to quit smoking. When it gets painful enough. And so it's kind of, but that's what I'm saying. That's the way it's been for me. I've quit a lot of things. I quit drinking alcohol 43 years ago. I quit smoking pot 45 years ago. I quit smoking cigarettes 30 years ago. So I've quit a lot of things, and those things clearly have all stuck. And it's not like I have to try anymore to not smoke pot, smoke cigarettes, or drink alcohol. I don't have to try anymore. It's just a way of life for me. But when it comes to food, oh my, it's a different, let's go ahead and call it an addiction process, because that's probably what it is, but it's a different experience for me. And I can't seem to just stick with a solution that works. I've found and implemented solutions that have worked. Anyhow, that was the focus. That was the focus this morning, going into the session. Let's get more interested in that. Let's continue that conversation. And in the very first session, it was great. We established clearly the parts that are involved in the problem and the solution. This time, I thought we would be continuing that. That was the intention going into this session. But the practitioner, I'm sure she wouldn't mind me naming her. She's an excellent practitioner. I'd highly recommend her. Her name is Marty, Barti, Bargo. Sorry, Barty, if I'm mispronouncing your last name. But if anybody's interested, I'll make sure I put Barty's contact information in show notes. She's excellent. And one of the things that she does is she has me check in to see what's alive inside. That's my language for it. But she's asking me, what do you notice as we're getting ready to explore, and as we're talking about all this stuff this is going on, what are you noticing? And what I noticed was a shakiness, a trembling inside. I was doing much like what I'm doing right now, storytelling, giving lots of background. And when I finally finished, she asked me to notice now what was going on inside. And that's what I noticed, a trembling, a shaking, a fear. And she helped me to really flesh that out. And I've never explored that before. And once we began to explore it, I recognized and acknowledged, this is something that's very familiar. This is something I've experienced my whole life. And what we discovered is that it's related to wanting to speak up and speak my truth, whether that's a preference or an opinion or an objection or a boundary or whatever that would be. Just to be heard in full sentences without being interrupted and cut down and shamed for doing so terrifies parts of me. And that's where we ended up going today in that exploration. It was fascinating. Using the IFS model, we were able to discover that there was a 2-3-year-old version of me that was terrified of my bully parents that would threaten, scream, yell, and actually use physical violence against me. And that has stayed with me. I'm 70. I'll be 71 years old in 3 months. And, and it's still in me after all of those years.
And is that the same part trembling for similar reasons around food?
We didn't get that far. I
Oh,
suspect that it is. It's just that in that style of using the IFS model in coaching, we go with whatever the body and the system is presenting.
sure.
Whereas in the style that I use, typically, we're going to be more focused on the coaching objective
Mhm,
and the coaching request that supports that objective, unless something like what happened this morning with me and Marty happened. And
mhm.
then, of course, I need to be flexible enough as coach to go there too, because
Yeah.
that's the internal systems basically screaming and saying, I need your attention.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So I'm really glad that I went there this morning. It was an amazing, really amazing session.
And that, I mean, even if not in an IFS way, that is something that can be translated into any other style or form of coaching, like um even if you're not doing that investigation in terms of parts, um following the energy, like, well, what's up for you, or what's on your mind, or what's most relevant, and then following that. I mean, that's something, whether you're doing ontological coaching or any other form of coaching, that I think it's good to do. Like, this is what's going on in the clan. Let's discover what that's about.
Definitely valuable.
Mhm.
And would you agree that it's most maybe most productive and helpful in a coaching relationship to have those two anchors of this is what I'm here for, remembering this is why I came to coaching in the first place and what I'm trying to accomplish,
Mhm.
and tracking and measuring progress in that direction?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I always write down the first thing the client says, no matter what it is. I always write that down at the top of the page. And then I ask, what's going on and what would you like coaching on? But I've always got in mind, like, this is what was the first thing that came out of their mouth.
Interesting.
And it almost always is the key to the whole conversation.
Really?
Yeah,
So you kind of use that as a guide in your coaching then.
I do. Yeah,
Interesting. I did not know that.
yeah,
I'll have to
very
be
much
careful
so.
next time
Like,
we.
I was just talking to a guy this morning, and the first thing that came out of his mouth was, I don't do New Year's resolutions.
Okay.
Resolutions was, and I just wrote it down. I just wrote resolutions. And then we had this whole conversation about his relationship with his wife, his relationship to his business, but it was all about, he's trying to resolve something, right? And be resolved
Yeah.
about what's going to happen next. And, like, it's always, to me, it's almost like this magical key to what, because it's the first thing that pops out of their mouth when they get on the coaching call. It's really interesting.
Yeah. That is very interesting. I'm going to start paying attention to that more.
I keep going back to it, then throughout the conversation, I was like, well, what do you resolve about that? And then at the very end, I said, so we've been talking about resolutions the whole time, and you began by saying you don't do resolutions.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, but we talked about it in a very different way. Because what I don't like about doing New Year's resolutions is it just seems a list of things I should do. And the way
Yeah.
we talked about it, I'm inspired. I'm motivated. This is going to be a great new year when I resolve all these things. So it had a whole different effect. I said, well, that was the original intent of doing resolutions. Oh, I see, he said.
Well, it occurs to me, I feel like I've said as much as I want to say about my session this morning, and the things that we started talking about, like the difference between we could certainly refocus and point ourselves in the direction of the differences that someone might experience as in ontological coaching or coaching with someone that's trained in the IFS model,
Mhm.
especially an IFS coach that's been trained as I train them, which is to always make sure you have a coaching objective, and then once that's established, pay attention to the parts that show up, and
Well,
bring attention to those.
we could also mention other styles of coaching. Like, I think one of the big forms of coaching that's out there that is not IFS and is not ontological is something you might call performance coaching.
Okay.
It works a lot like athletic coaching, but it might be in business or in family relations or something like that. But it's
So what would describe that? What would that look like? If I were your client and I came to you and you're a performance coach, what would that look like?
well, I don't do it, but it's all about more. It's all about more, pushing, doing more, doing more faster, doing more even higher, like all of that.
I see. Yeah. Got it.
There's no question about who you're being. Like, who cares? Just get out there and run those laps,
Okay. So this would be more like a business coach. Most business coaches, I should say, that I've encountered are saying, here's the key performance indicators. This is what it takes for you to achieve what it is that you're trying to. So based on those KPIs, how are we doing this week? And what got in the way? And what would you do to correct that? And
yeah.
What bigger, deeper problem does this point to that might need to be addressed?
Or here's an exercise to do to help you get better at that. Right.
Yes. Got it. Yeah. And that's very useful. I really benefited from having a business coach that coached me in that way. And because I already had a village of support to help me with any of my ontological or trauma-based internal resistance to taking those actions, I brought that support in as well. So the combination of more of a logical, direct measurement of progress and identification of actions and accountability accordingly, combined with the emotional support that I needed to deal with my inner reactions to all of that, was very helpful. Very helpful.
Yeah. So, yeah, I just wanted to, in other words, just so our listeners, aren't led to think that we think there's only IFS or ontological. There are a variety of other ways that coaching happens too.
Yeah. My Meredith, and she's been on our podcast, on the Leadership Coaching Podcast. She is a marketing, I don't know that she calls herself a marketing coach, but I would consider her that. She's a consultant. And, but that's certainly in the same category of coaching that you just described, where she's the expert. She's the marketing expert. And then my job as client is to determine of the expertise that she brings, what can I implement? What will I implement?
Right. Yeah. So, but you had a suggestion as to where we go in the conversation now?
Yeah. You're an ontological coach. Yes.
I don't say that anywhere in print. I mean, it has influenced my coaching. It plays a big role, but I feel like I'm using a lot of different, whatever I need from my background. And ontology is one of those, but
okay. Well, here's what I want to propose. And that would be that you coach me today. We've got about 20 minutes before we need to wrap up the session. Do you feel like you could coach me?
Sure. Okay. I mean, do you feel coachable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's a good question, because I don't always feel coachable. In fact, one of the parts that I discovered this morning is a part that wants me to speak the genuine truth and really be fully self-expressed, but is remiss to do so if there's not safety in the conversation. And so if I'm not feeling safe, I'm not feeling coachable. I feel safe with you, of course. And despite the fact that this is going to be available for anybody to listen to, I also still feel coachable.
Great. What's your request?
Well, let's focus on what we've been talking about, which is what Marty and I have begun to talk about. My relationship with my body, my relationship to food, my relationship to exercise.
Are you looking for a way to apply IFS in your everyday life? The Compassionate Results Guidebook can help. It blends IFS with coaching to help you work with your parts, make self-led choices, and live in the world authentically. You can order your copy on Amazon or learn more at compassionateresultsguidebook.com. Now back to the episode.
Well, just I'm curious about something that you said in this regard. You said, I've given up a lot of things, cigarettes, pot, drinking, but this is different, you said.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it is, and I'm just curious how.
Well, in so many ways. And I've talked to a lot of people that also struggle with food or struggle with codependency, for example, relationships. It's almost like we need to be in relationship with other people. So if how do you shift from being codependent in relationship to not being codependent in relationship? You can't just give up relationships. I guess you can, and people do. They're hermits, and they minimize exposure to other people. But same with food from I've heard rumors that people can survive without food, but I wouldn't want to try it.
And you don't need to be who you want to be and how you want to live.
Well, yeah. So what I'm saying is that with alcohol, with pot, and with cigarettes, I know that if I had a drink of alcohol, I'd be putting myself in danger of convincing myself that I don't have a problem with alcohol anymore.
Mm-hmm.
If I smoke pot right now, or however you intake cannabis now, if I did any of that, I might really like it, and I might just go back to doing it and find myself completely blindsided by another addictive process that I got involved in. Same with cigarettes. I don't dare have a cigarette. I don't dare take a puff off a cigarette for fear that if I did, something might get triggered inside that says, hey, this is pretty great. I like this. I want to do a lot more of it.
Now, okay. So, and then with food?
Got to eat. I can't give up food.
Okay. But we're talking about not just eating, but overeating, eating things you shouldn't, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean shouldn't in the sense that you would agree with, not in some moral sense.
Right. So I, as I mentioned, over the last 20 years have had success for limited periods of time. And so it's different in that way as well, that I didn't just, when I gave up alcohol, I didn't just try not drinking for a week to see how I liked it, to see if I could tolerate it and to see if I got benefit, and then measured after a week or not whether I was getting enough benefit to continue to not drink alcohol. I think if I had done it that way, I never would have been able to quit.
Mm-hmm.
Same with cigarettes, same with pot.
Sure.
With eating, when I cut out sugar and bread and pasta,
Mm-hmm.
after a week, I can step on the scale and see I've lost 1.5 pounds to 3 pounds, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
After a month, I've lost 8 pounds. After 3 months, I've lost 20 pounds.
Right.
Maybe not, maybe 6 months before I lost 20 pounds, but it's clear and measurable. And the decision to sacrifice, that's what it feels like too, sacrifice my preference for sugar and pasta and bread for what my body feels and looks like, it doesn't seem as solid or as sustainable. There we go. It doesn't seem as sustainable as my ability to just make a clear decision. I'm not going to smoke. I'm not going to drink, and I'm not going to smoke pot.
How? What's the difference? I'm genuinely curious.
I can only tell you that it hasn't been sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
That, for whatever reason, whether it's because I plateau on the weight loss, because the discomfort of wanting to snack and then telling myself no is too great. I don't know.
And that was not the case with alcohol.
So interesting. No, I will say that in my first year of not drinking, there were probably 3 different occasions when I wanted to drink really badly. And actually, one of those times had made a decision to drink. And then there was divine intervention and it didn't happen. And I was relieved when it didn't happen and was able to recommit. But after that first year, I didn't want to drink again. I've never wanted to drink again after that first year.
So
I haven't wanted to smoke again since my day one of not smoking.
So what I'm learning is that we need a different analogy, like the analogy between food and alcohol and cigarette. It doesn't fit because you have a different relationship to food than you do to those things, and so that it's not. We shouldn't compare those. Let's think about like what's a better analogy? Something that you can or have brought, under your own charge and made a lasting decision in your own health and welfare's, for the
I would
sake.
say money's a good example of that. So, I guess we could get into debating whether or not it's necessary to earn and spend money. I could probably exchange on a barter, not have to have money, but in the world that I live in, that it's a way to know. Anyhow, I make money, I spend money, and I save money. I have debt, I pay down debt, I pay off debt. So that whole area has improved dramatically. I used to be just absolutely horrible with money. And
what motivates that? That's an area that you've seen fluctuations and you've taken charge of and created it the way you want it.
what's the question?
Well, what's the difference between that and the food, if any?
That is a really great question. I can tell you, I can describe the experience that I've had with both. I think I've described maybe enough of my experience with food. I could tell you more about that. But the experience with money was that when Kathy and I got together, I acknowledged and admitted I didn't try to hide that I really had bad habits with money. And I asked for her support and her help. I told her, I set an intention. I don't want to be bad with money. I want to be good with money. I want to start, saving more of it, spending less of it, and being more responsible with it, and be less impulsive with it. Stop using it for immediate gratification. And I asked her to help me in my decision making. And she agreed to doing so.
So I'm like, you see how that suggests itself like, oh my God, those are all of the things you want around food. And I just wonder if we drop the analogy to, those addictive substances, because this is different. You need to eat, right?
Yeah.
But just like we need to, earn and spend money, maybe there's a better analogy in how you took charge and got the results you wanted around money to the food situation. That's just one suggestion.
I like that a lot. And it brings up something I've been wanting to acknowledge out loud. And I don't know that I have yet with you or with anybody. And that is that when I quit those three things, cigarettes, alcohol, and pot, I did so within the context of pain and pleasure. It had gotten too painful. All three of them had gotten too painful. And the threat of potential loss if I didn't quit those was so great that operating within fear of loss and shame about my behavior, shame that I smoked. I felt like the scum of the earth. Shame that I was drinking when I realized I was putting so much at stake and hurting so many people with it. Fear with my pot smoking that my wife would leave me if I didn't. Fear that if I didn't quit drinking, my wife would leave me. So fear and shame as motivations, I want nothing more to do with that. I don't want those to motivate any change that I make in my life.
So this brings up the second piece for me, switching the analogy to, being more like the money situation, which you have mastered, is the motivation. Because I heard you say a few minutes ago, like, well, it's just not enough that, that I would look better and feel better like that. This is not enough for me. I still will go on a binge.
Right. It hasn't been.
So I would just want to, I'm not saying that it should be. In fact, what I'm saying is like, well, that's good to notice that just looking and feeling better is not, that's not the thing that's going to get you to change around your food. Right. I mean, for
Right.
better or for worse, you will continue to eat in a way that you're trying to change if it only depends, if the only motivation is that you're going to look a little better and feel a little better. So
Yeah.
that's something that you would want to really look at. What motivated your getting a handle on money? Is it something similar, or does there need to be a whole new, like reason to do this?
Yeah, I mean, all of the reasons that I've explored in the past have not been enough, including being around long enough to watch my kids grow up, watch my grandkids grow up, watch my grandkids have kids. All of that's happening, even though I'm eating and not happy with my body. I'm 70. I'll be 71 in 3 months. But I'm thinking more in terms of 90 to 100 and still being clear-minded and having a healthy body. I'd like to stick around a long time. So while all of that's true, and I love all those people that I want to be sticking around for and with, it still hasn't been enough.
That, I mean, that's something that I think you want to do some soul searching around. Like, just like, is there a reason in me? Is there a reason in me to bother with this? Because if not, it's
Then why am I bothered at all by it?
right.
Is there a reason to bother with it? Otherwise, why am I bothering with it at all?
Yeah.
I like that. That's a great question. Why am I bothering with this? So maybe that's the place to go. Why am I bothering with it? Why am I bothered by it? Vanity. I don't like what I look like with a big belly. I don't like what I look like and feel like with extra weight on my body. So that's true.
Okay.
But that points to pain. That points to pain and discomfort. That also points to shame. And would I like to look in the mirror and like what I see? Absolutely. I see pictures of myself when I was not that much younger. Periods over the last 20 years when I have stayed with the diet and lost that weight and fit into my clothes better. Kathy and I got married 13 years ago, and I got down to 150 pounds and looked great. And I see those wedding pictures now, and I think, God, I'd really like to look and feel that way again. And it's not enough.
So the fear and the shame piece, I think that's it sounds like that's part of the reason we're shifting away from comparing it to those other things. Is there a reason coming from love of yourself or others? Is there a reason coming from love to alter your eating? If not, if the shame and fear piece doesn't.
It seems like, despite that, so I'm acknowledging that the fear and the shame as motivators haven't been enough. And yet here they are, still the very first things that I can see. I can't seem to see past those.
Yeah.
And that's a great question. Is there a reason motivated by love? Yes. And that's not enough either. I mean, what I said earlier about wanting to be around and watch my kids and family, be around with and for them for a long, long time, that's based in love. And it's not enough.
I'm feeling a little bit like we're looking for a good reason to fit the occasion, right? And I would invite you to look and see if in that, like you said, why it bothers me. If there's a reason that just like it just grows naturally out of there, as opposed to, well, let me look and see, oh yeah, other people, or like it's either innate or there isn't one.
Oh, it is. It's there. It's innate. And when I was speaking earlier about having parts, that innate reason is embraced by parts of me who, if they were unopposed, this would no longer be an issue. I would be eating right. I'd be in balance. I'd be harmonious. My body would be in balance, and I'd be treating myself in such a way that my body was fed appropriately.
Sounds like we should talk about those parts and what they're saying,
Maybe. Yeah.
right? Because if they weren't there, you said, you'd be
Yeah.
like,
If the opposition wasn't there, if there weren't parts that were using food or that influenced me to use food like I used to use alcohol or cigarettes or pot.
oh, so there is an analogy. You use those. Say more about that. What is using it like you used alcohol?
It's pleasure, escape, shut down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And from out here, just reporting on my experience, even answering that question requires that I speculate a bit, because what I've learned through IFS is that I have analytical and logical parts that can make sense, or certainly an attempt to make sense of why my other parts do what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But until I actually explore and ask those parts that are influencing me to do what that are influencing me as they do, I don't really understand.
Right.
It's only speculation.
Right. At the same time, I get that. It sounds to me like you're saying that desire for pleasure, escape, and shutdown, that's just shifted from alcohol and pot and cigarettes over to food.
Yeah.
So that's what there is to attend to, is
I
that
think so too.
right? That's that seeking of pleasure, escape, and shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
What would, I mean, I can relate to that. I have a little bit of a transparency with this, so I might not be your best coach on this.
What do you mean?
Because I can't see around the issue because I'm in it.
Oh, I see. Wow. Let me just acknowledge you for acknowledging that. That might sound real coachy for me to say that, but I think that's amazing. When someone that, as you are, is supporting me and acknowledges that they're on the court,
Mm-hmm.
that's really important. That's really, really powerful. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
So when I ask myself that question, and I do ask myself that question, like, why can't I just have, an enjoyable evening where I don't have to find some way to pleasure myself or escape from life or shut down and numb out? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what would it be like? This is I think the real genuine question that I ask myself is like, that I know, for example, that when I had an extended period of time when I didn't drink or smoke, that there was just a completely other level of pleasure, escape, and shutting down. A whole other level. It's like, why am I doing pleasure, escape, and shutdown in first gear, namely under the influence, when the pleasure and escape that's available when I'm not drugged out is even better. And so I find the motivation for myself is knowing that when I'm sober, the pleasure and escape is so much better.
Well, I'm hearing pleasure and escape as synonymous with, I think what you mean by that, correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's not really pleasure, it's presence. And it's not really escape, it's presence.
Right. I mean, right, exactly. That's the point, is that what the pleasure isn't the pleasure of being tipsy, it's the pleasure of being in this moment and alive
Yes.
and picking up on stuff and enjoying all the nuances and detail. Right. It's like, that's the difference between like brown pleasure and gold pleasure,
Someone asked me, well, it was Barty this morning when we first came into the conversation. You know how you said you write things, the first thing someone says down at the beginning of session. I said, how's your Christmas? And she told me, and she said, how's your Christmas? Are you getting lots of rest? And because she knew I was taking this week off from coaching people. And I wanted to answer her. She's just someone like you are, who I just want to be honest with and have fidelity in my words. And I said, I don't know that I know how to rest. I really don't know if I know how to rest.
Yeah.
And the reason I guess that that's coming up right now is that at the end of a day, when I've expended the energy that it takes to be focused and present with my clients, or engaged in running my business and making decisions and administering all the executive actions that I need to run my business, I'm tired. I'm hungry. I'm ready for a good meal, and I'm tired. I just want to shut everything down and zone out. And so what I'll do is I'll sit on the couch and I'll watch a ball game or something on Netflix or Prime with my wife. We'll have a nice meal, we'll do cleanup. It's kind of a routine. It's nothing. There's nothing horrible about any of that. But in between all of that, if earlier in the afternoon, I walk out of my office after session, even if I'm not hungry, I'll go grazing. I'll go looking in the refrigerator. What is there to graze on? What is there that I can just snack and put in my mouth to have some pleasure, to move around and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of clues there. But slowing down and actually sitting down and just resting without distracting my attention and giving my brain something to do, like watch a TV show. There's some clues in there as well, I think.
Yeah. I had a client once who was saying similar things to what you're saying right now. And I asked him to work. So I don't know how much this is going to apply, but I'm just telling a true story that I asked him to focus both on where he might be resisting his work, such that he would need something to pleasure, work. This is so hard. I gotta go take a break and get some pleasure. So look at what the resistance is on that side, but then also, look at what is really pleasurable. Because like he would get off of work and have beer, and he loved beer. That was his thing: beer. And then he said, well, I like one or two, and then I started to become less able to talk to my wife or to fix the car. He loved to work on his car. Like, I'm just not as good. And then I have that sensation in my stomach of being bloated. I was like, well, that doesn't sound like pure pleasure. What, so I had him look on both sides of the equation. Where's the resistance to the work that makes you seek something to fix that afterwards? And what is really pleasurable to you? And that opened things up. And he went into a different line of work, for one thing, because he had to perform. He was on, he's on the clock, and people were watching, and what are the results? And so once he was able to eliminate that, he opened up a nursery school. He and his wife, other people leave their kids with them during the day, so they go to work, and and he doesn't have that same need anymore to have some beer afterwards.
Nice.
Been having pleasure all day long, right?
Yeah, I think that you've got something there. I think there's something to look at there. I'm noticing the time. I think we might want to just begin to wrap up now.
And for myself, just on the other side, for me, this becomes a spiritual conversation, because I get a lot more out of my intellectual and spiritual life than I do out of a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And so for me, if I'm, seeking real pleasure, then the bottle of wine is going to have all these entailments that are not pleasurable. Whereas, you know, reading or just meditating, it's going to give me a much more sustained and clean high.
Or playing, you know, music,
Right.
singing, connection, board game with my wife, something. Yeah.
So I just want to acknowledge, like, when I saw that there was a transparency here for me, I went into conversation instead of coaching.
Yeah. And it was a great conversation, and I got some insights out of it, and it was valuable. And I'll just say that, you know, it seems like you just basically validated the direction that Marty and I had been going in, is let's just find out what these parts are trying to accomplish and what it is about. I mean, as you know, I love coaching. I love the work that I do. So what parts feel like I need to get relief from the effort that it takes to coach?
Right.
And what parts are actually putting effort into it? Because when coaching is going great, I'm not actually needing to put any effort at all in.
Right.
All right. Till next time.
Right.
We appreciate who you are, that you would be listening to this podcast, and want to acknowledge all those parts of you that yearn for the experience of the true you.
If you like this episode, click like, share it with others, and be sure to subscribe. Listen again next week for the newest episode.
Check show notes for a transcript and a link to resources, including a link to let us know if you'd like to be a guest on our podcast.
Thank you for listening and going on this journey with us back to the true you.